today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Harvey Levin here.
Fabian here.
Cache McClay.
So, we got into the office this morning and got a tip and made some calls.
Yep.
Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker, after the Grammys, went to, which was in Las Vegas, went to a wedding chapel.
Yep.
And they wanted an Elvis officiant to
marry them.
Yeah.
At 1:30 a.m.
1:30 a.m.
Now the question is, was it in spirit or was it in reality?
Well,
that's the mystery here.
So here's the thing. When we put this up on the site, we spoke to somebody connected with the wedding chapel.
Yeah.
And asked them, did they have a marriage license? We were told two things. Yes, and we don't marry people without it.
A definitive yes from them. That they
yes,
presented a license.
And we do not marry people without it.
Interesting.
So they go there and they say that they do not want anybody taking any pictures, and they brought their own professional photographer.
That's
Okay?
interesting.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we put the post up, and then our Kourtney and Travis sources tell us they didn't have a marriage license.
God, the Kardashians. Always with the riddles and the cryptic and the backpedaling. It's weird. So first of all, we should acknowledge we have not been able to find or locate a marriage license for them, right? So that itself speaks volumes. Based on that alone, it would seem that they're not
unless
married.
They got it from somewhere else.
Right.
I feel like this is what happens when you're not sober at 1:30 a.m. and you just want to have fun and you go get married. Like,
but
they're not sober, so like who knows what they presented.
But the thing is, if what the wedding chapel people are telling us is in fact true, and we're going to take what they're saying as on its face, which is saying that they say that they saw the marriage license and that they would not marry people without one. So if that's true,
those two things,
that conflicts with the fact that we have not been able to locate a marriage
and our
license.
sources said they didn't have one.
So I'm going to take the Kardashian sources at face value here, that maybe they didn't get married, but I'll tell you.
They did something, though. They were there doing something.
Something else I know that I can't say. I can't because it'll give up a source.
Okay.
And it makes me still think, it really made me think they got married. But look, I'll take it.
They are engaged. I mean, they're going to get married. So it's just a matter of when at this point. Like, so whether it's now in Vegas or 2 months now in Santa Barbara, who cares? Like, just get hitched already. We know you're going to do it.
They might not do it. They might not do it in Vegas. I mean,
well, can I say something real quick about this whole Kourtney Travis thing and just their relationship in general? And this is hot take territory, but I'll just say it. Kourtney and Travis are too old for this type of too old for this tomfoolery, and they're not kids. This is something that kids do in their 20s.
Can I tell you what old is? Can I tell you what old is? Old is using the word tomfoolery.
Well, think about it. Well, Kourtney has it.
True.
She was in a long-term relationship for 9 years. Had 3 kids.
Never got married. Yep.
So it's just like, I mean, I get I get her being anxious and excited to just do it. And then this is Travis 3 times the charm. Why not?
I can tell you something about them because I do know this. And I love Travis. I just love him. We did
Hollywood loves him too. He is getting booked. You will never see a live show without Travis Barker on the drums. He is working nonstop. People love Travis Barker.
He's the best. And, we did a show together.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And when we did the show, I went to his house. And he was showing me around. And it was beautiful house. And I was asking him, who did this? And he told me about a designer he had. And then he said, I'm trying to think, it was maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so I remember at one point he said to me, yeah, and Kourtney helped me. And I said, Kourtney Kardashian? He said, oh, yeah. He said, we're really close.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
they've been friends for a long time.
They've been friends forever. And she decorated the house. She helped decorate the house for him. And I was listening to this, and there was such affection when he was talking about Kourtney. But there was nothing back then. So it didn't really surprise me that they've really been close, and they've both been through breakups and all this stuff, and they found each other. And I think it's kind of cool. I hear what you're saying, though.
Yeah, plus, not to get too off topic, but them constantly making out, and it's not just making out, but it's like tongue down each other's throats. It's embarrassing.
On top of each other.
It's embarrassing.
I don't know if it's embarrassing. It's definitely the honeymoon phase. I get it, but I'm just happy they're happy.
They
So
really
are.
seem happy.
And
I
I guess time will tell if they're actually going to be taking a honeymoon in the near future or not, because this whole wedding, this Vegas wedding thing is such a mystery. But
Okay.
we will see.
We're going to move on to Tory Lanez. Tory Lanez tweeted something with one letter that got him thrown in the pokey and with bail at an astronomical level.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So here's the deal. You know that Tory is standing or going to stand trial for allegedly shooting Meg Thee Stallion.
Right.
And he says he didn't do it. Somebody else did it.
Mm-hmm.
So he tweeted, good. Well,
this was in February. This is when he tweeted. I'll just say it. So, and I don't mind. I don't mind saying it in full. It's fine. He tweeted this in February. Back in February, there was this big rumor and report that, no DNA on the gun.
Well, that's true, by the way.
And we're gonna get to that in a second.
Yeah,
But this is what Tory and then Megan responded to that, and she was really upset about that, saying, "What are you guys talking about? You're getting ahead of yourselves, yada yada." To that, Tory tweeted at the time, good dick had me fucking 2 best friends and I got caught. That's what I apologized for. It's sick how you spun it. And what he's referencing is Megan was saying, why did you apologize to me? That in her mind is an admission of guilt. And if you go listen to Tory Lanez's recent records, I listen to his albums, they're fantastic. He talks a lot, he alludes a lot to the Megan situation. They were seeing each other. They were boyfriend, girlfriend, full-blown involved. And now he's saying,
well, hold on.
We can't say that they were boyfriend and girlfriend.
They were seeing each other. They were romantically involved. I mean, whatever the label is, it doesn't matter. They were 100%
okay, but we
involved.
don't know that for sure.
Yes, we do. Oh, just because Megan is not on the record with it, it's quite clear that he was having sex with her.
We can say
and now he's saying, not only was I sleeping with you, I was sleeping with your friend who was also in the car that night, and that's why this is kind of blown up to what it is. That's his point of view.
So you should understand that that he was arrested for allegedly shooting Meg Thee Stallion in the foot. The judge, this is a routine thing. Cops do this. They get protective orders.
Protective orders.
So there was
Stay
a protective
away.
order.
Don't mention her.
You cannot communicate with her
address
directly,
her.
indirectly. So,
and in this tweet, I kind of glossed over, but he says it's sick how you like the letter U spun it though, and that was obviously, and the judge saw this way too. It was directed at Megan, and the judge said you violated the order. Put him in cuffs. I don't know if he was sent to jail, or if he was just detained.
He was handcuffed and taken back to the holding cell.
Oh yeah, so he's back in the holding cell.
So the prosecutor wanted to raise his bail to $5 million.
Yeah, which is absurd.
Well, here's my thing. I think he should keep his mouth shut. Like, this isn't the only time he spoke about the issue. It seems almost like he's taunting Megan Thee Stallion. Like, if you're not guilty, let it come out. Let's see what happens. But even DJ Academics came out and said, in February, there's no DNA on the gun.
Right.
And whether it came from Tory's team or not, it just seems like a constant taunting. Either way, Megan got shot in the foot. Like, who wants to keep, like, bullying and hearing about this issue online when there's a court date pending?
I 100% agree with you. Tory should let the case play out. And if I know he believes he's innocent, and I got to be honest with you, I suspect I don't know if he's going to be, I don't know if he's innocent. I just know, and we're going to get to the DNA thing too, but we should mention that the bail was set at $350,000. He's probably going to post it and get out later today.
They've already started that. He's going to be out today.
He's going to be out by the end of today. And back to this DNA thing, because to your point, I agree. Tory should shut up, let the case play out. It's going to go to trial, and let the jury decide. He seems very eager to taunting or just kind of changing the narrative, because the narrative, it seems, is that Meg Thee Stallion is 100%, and that's the thing. Like, there's this whole thing of like, believe women automatically, no matter what, like without actually understanding the facts of the case first. And I think Tory, to his defense, just wants you're right. Tory should let the facts come out and let the case play out. But back to this DNA thing. So this is interesting. So at the time, DJ Academics, who's friends with Tory Lanez, jumped the gun and said, no DNA on the gun. That's not the case,
that
right?
wasn't what it was. It was inconclusive, meaning they couldn't say if it was his.
So that's what. So Harvey, can you explain a little bit? Like,
So there were 4 DNA matches on the gun, and they were all intermixed together. And because of that, they couldn't determine whose DNA it was.
Right.
And so they said it's inconclusive. Now on the magazine,
he's out. His DNA was not on it.
He's excluded.
Conclusively
but
not
he shot
on
a gun,
it.
so.
Well, hold on. We don't. That's the thing. We don't.
There was a gun shot at Megan's foot.
He says no.
He says he didn't
shoot
it.
No. Right. Okay.
Right.
There was a gun. Megan got shot in the foot.
A gun went off.
Right.
That's what we know.
There
a gun
is
went
mixed DNA
off
on the gun. So a magazine. I don't know that is
So here,
It's going to be evidence.
It will be evidence, but that is not telling. Like that's not end all be and all. Just to say that we just don't.
Let's
we
be
have
honest.
to
You're
wait.
the lawyer. If this
the
goes to trial, which is going to go to trial soon, I think in September is when the judge set the trial date for. So it's down the road a few months. But if this goes to trial, and this is the evidence, inconclusive DNA evidence
We
for
don't
Tory
know
Lanez.
all the facts though.
You're right. We don't know all the facts and the evidence, but based on this evidence so far, this is a key piece
What,
of
from
evidence in this
DJ
case.
Academics?
No, we got this from our sources today. Sean Hawley told us Tory Lanez's DNA it's
Sean
inconclusive.
Hawley is who though?
His lawyer.
lawyer.
Who's lawyer? Tory Lanez's
Tory
lawyer.
Lanez's lawyer.
Okay, great.
Assuming that holds up.
So
That's
here's
okay.
but
Assuming
here-
that holds up,
here-
if that is in fact the case,
If yes,
Tory is, in my mind, is going to beat this case.
No, here's the problem. Here's the problem. Yes, DNA is really important.
Yes.
DNA is not necessarily a
For something like this, it kind of
Let-
is the end all be all.
Let
Is
me
it not?
let me
Sorry.
tell you. Let me tell you
Go ahead.
the bigger thing than DNA, because the DNA in the gun doesn't exclude him. So it's still an open question because it could be his DNA. Right?
Okay.
we
Right?
just don't
You're
know.
right.
could
I guess
be-
that's something that prosecutors
could-
might try to convince
well-
the jury of.
Well, they will. They're
They
going to
will.
say it could be his DNA. Then they got witnesses, and Meg Thee Stallion is going to take
Three.
right.
Babe.
She's going to take the stand. The other woman
The
who was in
friend
the
is
car
gonna
is going to take the stand,
and Tory.
they're going to say Tory. Well, see, I'm not sure Tory's going to testify. He may,
We'll
but
see.
but the other two are going to say he shot Megan,
Okay.
and
But then at that point, and like,
and then if the jury believes
it's
them,
just a he said, she said, or
Well,
I guess
but
two
that's-
she's
by the
and
way-
one he.
right?
Perhaps.
But
just
that's
said
the way
evidence.
court cases
Assuming
work.
that one witness actually
That's the
testified.
way
Well,
court
well,
cases
we
work.
weren't there. Okay, so we just have to
All
wait
I
to
know
see
is
how
that
it
people
plays
just
out.
the assumption that Tory Lanez did this, us assuming that right off the bat is wrong.
And
Like,
us
I
assuming
understand-
that he didn't is also wrong because we weren't there.
I'm
So we
just-
can't
I'm-
defend him and say, well, this isn't the case and that's the case.
I agree it was wrong up until today. Up until today, when I've learned the no DNA inconclusive thing, I was like, wow. Like,
No,
in
no,
my
no,
mind,
but-
that
we've been
speaks
through that.
volumes.
But
We've
again,
been through that.
the
Did we?
inconclusive doesn't exonerate him.
In
Yeah.
you're right. In the law, in the eyes of the law, it
Well, that's
doesn't.
what
But
we're talking
in the public opinion, at least mine,
No,
it
it just
certainly
says
does.
they can't determine it at the moment. That's not saying that it wasn't his or it wasn't there or we don't know. It's just saying it can't be determined.
That's
I
right.
think he's going to beat it, but we'll
Okay.
see.
Okay. Another rock brother comes
Oh
forward.
boy, here we go.
I did not know there were 4 rocks. Or 7 rocks, right?
There's like
Seven
rock
brothers.
rock
so
siblings.
Chris
yes.
has a lot of support. So now Kenny Rock, his younger brother, did an interview with the LA Times
Yep.
Mhm.
saying the following. It eats at me watching it over and over again, the slap,
Right.
because you've seen a loved one being attacked and there's nothing you can do about it. My brother was no threat to him, and you just had no respect for him at that moment. You just belittled him in front of millions of people that watched the show. Then he went on. I might have looked at it differently had he initially apologized when he got on the stage and cried and accepted the award, but he didn't. So right there, that tells me that is something else, that there is something else.
And there's a couple of other nuggets that he mentioned. One, apparently Will Smith has not called Chris Rock
That's true.
personally,
By the
and
way,
he's
that's
also
true.
calling for the Academy to revoke Will's Oscar.
That's not gonna
going to happen. 100%.
But
agree.
I got to tell you something. Will Smith should pick up the phone.
Yeah, he should have
Yeah.
done that like the
Call-
next day.
He should have done it the next day.
Yeah.
But to me, and again, this may just be my age, but an Instagram apology doesn't cut it.
No.
I
If
agree.
somebody slapped me on that
for
stage,
something of this magnitude,
Right.
it's definitely not.
I
gonna
want a
cut it.
phone call from that
Yeah,
person.
dude.
I want them to
Or
talk
show
to
up
me.
at my front door if you want. That'd
Right.
be even better.
I'm not.
but-
Look, I am not buying an Instagram apology
No.
if I were Chris Rock.
No, I wouldn't buy it even if it wasn't like that's just not. That is just a public forum to say, "Hey, look, I'm apologizing," but that holds no weight. I'm
No
sorry.
way.
Maybe the
Zero
second
weight.
apology
I agree.
was a little bit more
was
genuine
more- it was
when he
more
genuinely
sincere.
said, "I'm sorry," and he
Mhm.
felt more sincere.
You
but
got to
still,
call the guy you
yeah,
slapped.
call,
agree.
yeah,
You got to call the guy you slapped.
And the thing
and
is,
even still, like
the thing is too with Will, not only should he do it on a moral level because it would be the right thing to do, but on a business PR level, like, bro, your movies are on pause with Netflix and Sony. You know this is how the game works. You want to get those movies greenlit again? Call Chris Rock, show some contrition, even if it's fake, even if you really don't feel it, because I don't think he actually feels sorry, frankly. Even if you don't feel it, call him, apologize, go through the fake motions,
Yeah.
and then get back on track again. That's going to help, because the longer you don't call him, the more this is going to get prolonged. The more Rock Brothers are going to come out and slam you, because
and by the way, based on what I'm hearing, I don't think Chris Rock would accept that apology right now.
really,
Yeah.
Would he take the phone call at least?
I don't know. But I don't think he would. Based on what I know, I don't think he would accept the apology.
It's very. I mean, look, his brothers are out here speaking. I have to assume that they're not speaking.
And I don't say that as shade on Chris Rock. You could understand why
he doesn't have to accept it.
Absolutely.
Like, no.
I think that's the problem. Like, because Chris Rock is so silent, we just don't. It's just prolonging it. Like, what does he feel? Is that enough? Was that apology
100%.
enough? But if he comes out and say, "Hey guys, I'm cool now. I think we can move forward," or "Hey guys,"
he's not there.
He's not there.
I talked to somebody today. He is still processing this.
Right, and I get
What
that.
does that
I
mean,
get
though?
that.
He said that himself too, but what exactly do you think that means? Because like, what can you process?
I'm still processing this.
Really?
Yes.
I kind of am too, but look. He's starting a comedy tour. He was really focused on that, and then all of a sudden, this explodes on the heels of that. And I wish I could tell you again. I'm not allowed. I can't say.
That's all right.
He is processing this still. He doesn't know what he wants to do, and
meaning
I don't know.
Really? So he's mulling his options?
I don't know.
Big picture?
I mean, you got to understand where he's coming from.
I'm just telling you what I've heard. He has not made definitive decisions on anything.
Well, we should mention if that in fact is the case, let's weigh out Chris Rock's. He can still press charges if he wants. That window is still open.
Correct.
He could still, obviously, he could definitely still sue.
He's not going to do that.
I don't. Yeah, we'll see. But the pressing charges thing, like, is if he is in fact still mulling that over, that is huge.
I mean, silence is the smartest answer right now. Like, he looks like he is taking the high road. Like, we just don't know, and I think this is the best thing he can do. Like, at least until he has no other choice but to say something.
And I also wonder if Chris Rock's silence for the moment, maybe he's waiting on Will to do the right thing. Maybe he's waiting. I'm waiting. I'm giving you the window.
He's into this show right now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really focused on this show. That's a big deal for him. I mean, this show is something he's planned for months and months and months.
Right.
You know, this happened. Look, this came like a bolt out of the blue.
Right.
Yeah.
And I could understand why because he can't focus on it a lot because he's got his shows.
Right. To play devil's advocate, I know we said Will should call him up, but wouldn't that make Will, like, he asserted himself, he felt like he was defending his wife. Do you guys think him apologizing more?
Will Smith should say, I think, he should say, look, this is a very personal thing for Jada and May, and you don't understand how it affected her.
Right.
And maybe you didn't know she had alopecia, but this is something that you just threw out, and I shouldn't have done what I did. I was processing and thinking about my wife's upset over this whole thing, which, by the way, I don't think this had much to do with alopecia.
That's something he could say.
I don't think it had to do with this. I think it had to do with the 2016
Right, we don't have to relitigate
Oscars.
that.
But whatever. And then he
yeah.
just says, but no matter what, whichever way you slice it, I should not have gotten out of my seat.
And I'm sorry.
I should not have slapped you.
Right.
I should not have screamed at you. I'm so regretful and remorseful.
Yeah.
And I sincerely apologize.
See, take that tape, send it to Will Smith right now, because that's exactly what he should say. That was perfectly said. Well done.
Which I
you know how to
agree,
apologize.
But I'm just asking for the folks who are so definitive that he was defending his wife. Would that take some of that away?
Because Will Smith himself has acknowledged
because it was
that he was
wrong to do.
And Will Smith himself has said it in words, fake or not. He has said it. I was wrong. He has acknowledged
whichever way you slice and dice this thing, he should not have done what he did.
Because
he shouldn't have resorted to violence. I agree.
Yeah, because like if I agree, like whether he was defending his wife or whatever, like he seems to like really have like owned up to the fact I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this. I am apologetic. If you put it in words on writing, just pick up the phone and say it, bro. Like it would go a long way.
So Joe Rogan has. Well, hold on. I mean, I want to talk about this because I think this is.
I actually like Joe Rogan a lot.
This is really important. I think this is a discussion that goes beyond the topic.
It might be the talk of our time.
Yes.
Like, honestly, like it's the most polarizing issue of our day, in my opinion.
And
yeah, you're right. One of.
And
sure.
I think I have an issue with the fact that it's this polarizing. I'll explain. Here's what Joe Rogan said, and this has to do with
Lia Thomas.
With Lia Thomas, the swimmer,
transgender swimmer
who just won a race recently.
The first one.
And here's what Joe Rogan said.
Yeah.
Well, what it is now is not good. What it is now is assault on women's sports. And the idea that anybody would think it's fair that someone who is number 462 as a man, 462 in the nation, is number 1 as a woman a year later.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
You don't think maybe it was her passion for swimming that got her to number 1?
Could be. It's just an amazing woman.
Or a change in diet?
Could be.
Could be that.
Could be.
Yeah.
Maybe just becoming her true self.
I can't think of any other factor it could be. I'm just going passion for swimming.
Maybe. You're probably right. But that might be the woke straw that breaks the society's camel back.
You're starting to see a lot of those now.
Women are so frustrated because if you or parents, if your daughter is competing and they're competing against a trans woman, it's not fair.
I just want to say a couple of things on this. So this is a lot of people are going to say Joe Rogan's transphobic because of what he said, right?
Bigot, all the
Here's my problem with this. That, the transgender community was in the recesses of society for a long time. And that's to their detriment and to society's detriment. That they were not ever embraced, even in the gay community.
Right.
It was a fringe kind of thing.
Sure.
In the last 5, 6, 7 years, that's really changed and changed for the better. And I think people are sensitive to it now.
Yeah.
But
and even Joe in his full comments, he acknowledged that. Like we have as a society have become more accepting.
But here's the thing about it. People are getting educated. They knew nothing. A lot of people knew nothing about the transgender community 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're learning about it now. And so this is an issue that, it has, polarized people. And look, I think ultimately, if there is some competitive advantage still, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, but if there is, it's something that it at least is open for discussion.
Sure.
But the fact that our society has reached a point where just discussing it makes you transphobic if you disagree.
Right.
That's,
even broaching the topic.
That's what I mean. That to me is the biggest
it's
issue
asinine.
right now.
It's asinine.
That we can't even talk about things because you know what? If you can't talk about it, you can't get educated.
Right.
And if you can't get educated, there's going to be underlying prejudice that you never deal with. And that's why talking is such a vital thing in this country. And we're squandering our freedom because everybody is so afraid of getting dragged, being called racist, being called transphobic. And sometimes they are. But in this case, why can't there be a civil discussion where you don't say to somebody, you disagree with me, you're transphobic?
Well, here's this. I totally agree with that. But let me ask you this. Somebody like Joe Rogan or Caitlyn Jenner or DeSantis or even Trump, who's been touting this as well, if they say, and look, I want to acknowledge this up front, just because Lia Thomas and look, I'm not a doctor either. I don't know about the actual physiological advantage she may or may not have. Based on my eyeball test and what I would call just common sense and going with my gut for whatever that's worth, I would say, yes, it's quite obvious she has an advantage.
That's insensitive.
Why is that?
Well, just based on your eyeballing? What does that mean?
Because Lia Thomas is 6'4", she has a huge wingspan, and if you just consider that logically, she would naturally have a more physical advantage over the other women who are smaller than her, right?
I don't know that we can say that.
Look,
but why can't? Well, here's the thing.
No, we can say it, but
but we can't. That's the point. Is that we can't.
But
if Fabian's point may be right and it may be wrong.
Sure.
But he's
you don't
got.
Have to, of course, you don't have to agree with that.
And I'm not. This is not against you at all. But what I'm saying is, he may be right, he may be wrong. But the fact that
the fact that I say it in and of itself is insensitive. Why?
I think it's not that people can't have discussions. I think it's saying we're basing it off science, but then you said, I'm not a scientist. And neither of us are. You're I think that point was okay. You're well, I'm not sure, but I think that it could be unfair based on biology. But then it's well, based on just looking at her, she seems like she would be that's why it's a little insensitive because it's not based on facts. It's based on stereotypes.
Look, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. And I feel a lot of people feel this way. You see something and we don't have to necessarily be a doctor or a scientist to just call it as you see it or call it as it is, I would argue. And again, we'll agree to disagree. The one thing I was going to say about Joe Rogan is even if you agree on the Lia Thomas story specifically, even if you agree with them, say, yeah, she probably does have a physical advantage, her in and of itself does that not mean that all trans women in women's sports have an automatic physical advantage. That's one thing I want to say.
I agree with that.
And that's one thing that I think Joe Rogan and everyone else who's echoing these sentiments are sort of missing. There's nuance that's missing from both sides, frankly, because Joe Rogan is issuing these blanket statements oh, Lia Thomas, and that's sort of.
It seems like everybody's issuing blanket statements.
And honestly, people were waiting for a story like this in sports because this has been a fear that has been kind of fired up from the right wing that oh my God, they're ruining women's sports. But in reality, there's a lot of trans athletes, trans women athletes competing in women's sports that are getting beat by women. Like, you don't hear about those stories. You never hear about those stories. That happens all the time. But when Lia Thomas comes around, it becomes a big high profile thing. It becomes the leading example. And they make that the crux of their argument. So there's nuance. They're missing that nuance. With that said, as far as Lia Thomas specifically goes, I'll stick by this. I do think that she herself, in this specific instance, might have had an advantage.
And so I don't agree or disagree with that. I definitely understand both sides of the argument, given that she started transitioning in 2019. Like, and people are arguing that her body was developed as a male. I get that. The only question is, I think what people can't seem to answer is, okay, if that's the case, where does she deserve to compete?
I don't know, but
that's a very good question.
But here's the
here's
the problem. That goes to the heart of this whole thing, and people are afraid to talk about it because if they have a gut feeling, like Fabian, who may need to be educated. I don't know. I want to have these discussions so the truth surfaces. And I don't know what that is necessarily, because people are so afraid to have a conversation about it that they're not having conversations. So what's happening is everybody is kind of like
being written off,
or they're in their own camps, and everybody's kind of like
siloed away.
That's right. And that's not the way to progress in society.
Yeah, but what is the way to progress?
The way to progress is to have conversations, and to be able to feel free enough to say, I don't understand this.
But what is the answer for Lia Thomas?
I understand. I hear. So
because that's who it affects.
You're
directly.
right. That's a good point, because you're right. Like, we can
Lia Thomas won.
We can talk.
Right, she won, but
you're right.
Some people aren't even acknowledging that.
We can talk all day about it, but you're right. If you take Joe Rogan and all these other people at their argument, at their word, the next obvious question is like, okay, fine, let's run with your premise. Where does she belong? And then you hear people talk about, oh, let's have separate transgender. What? Like, no. We're not about to do all that. Like, different like trans categories for competition. Yeah. That's insanity. That's insanity.
So then what's the and that's the hardest
you're
part.
right. And I don't have the answer to that. And I should think about that. But like, you're right.
But if we have conversations,
like, do we just
and you bring doctors in,
are they just not able to compete at all? Like,
and then they say, well,
trans
fair. Women can't play.
No.
Yeah, this is slippery slope.
What I would argue to you is, if she didn't have a competitive advantage, then she benefits from the conversation, because a lot of people just have a gut feeling about it. If she did not benefit from the transition.
But the harder question is, what if she did benefit, Harvey? Then what? What do we do?
Well, then I think we have to have an honest discussion about it.
But then what happens to her?
Well, I mean, because that's what's on the table right now. But the point is, we're not even allowed to talk these days.
You're right. And these are hard conversations. These are hard.
I mean, okay, what makes it hard, I get, so.
The sensitivity aspect of it,
sensitivity, but because we're dealing with, like, men and women's sports are separated in general because of this exact reason, right? Women's basketball, men's basketball, we don't compete against each other. So that's what makes it harder.
Because there is an inherent,
because
difference.
That is the argument. So now you have a woman who's transitioned is like, all right, where does she belong? We can discuss it, but what happens to her life? What happens to her?
But okay, either what if they say there's no competitive advantage? There's no competitive advantage. Then she swims, she wins, and it's
all
fine.
Good. Yeah.
If there is a competitive advantage, then you have to reach those difficult decisions.
But she did swim and she did win, and they said she could compete.
I understand that.
And now she's still getting taken away
so
from her.
let me ask you a question.
She met the threshold for NCAA.
That's
She met the threshold. She met their qualifications as they are. So that in and of itself, it's like she met their criteria. So like they can change the criteria.
But Cache, what you're saying is, what if there is a competitive advantage? What do you do then?
Yeah, that's the hard.
But wait a minute. What you do then is you have an honest discussion about it, where you can talk about it, because there are people who believe what you do, Fabian, and aren't transphobic.
Right. I mean, I believe that.
But people are painted that way, and that's why. Whatever the answer is, we should know what the answer is, and then we come up with something rational.
Right.
But it's like we're not even allowed to talk anymore.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know. I don't know how. Because we still don't have answers. What happens to these women every day?
We're not going to
But don't you want to get answers?
Yeah, I do.
And the way to do it is conversation.
Right, but we're talking, and they're swimming and not feeling empowered.
I'm here to answer. The direct response is, I don't have the answer. Ken.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
sorry.
either.
And
I
by the way,
apologize.
when we
You're
started
right.
this, the first thing you said when we said Joe Rogan, everybody said, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
Well, Joe Rogan spoke his mind.
He did. He
And
did. He
you know,
speaks
you
his
may
piece a
agree, you
lot.
may disagree, but you know, let's just have honest conversations where people don't get painted as, you know.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
place to start for sure, I think.
And that's a good place to end too.
Is it? Yeah. Okay.
See you Friday, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.